Here's what you should pretty much end up with here is a coil that looks quite a bit like a chain, and 30 gauge nichrome. It's basically 4 strands twisted in a kind of a unique way, and this build is kind of more for looks than it is for performance, but it produces a pretty significant amount of vapor for a 0.3 ohm coil, and flavor is good enough. The main thing, the main reason though for building this is for aesthetics, just so it looks kind of neat, and I think a lot of people will end up liking it. Usually I like to build more for performance, but I had a lot of requests for this, so hopefully you guys enjoy making this. Yep, that's about it. It's going to be a pretty long one, so fast forward the parts that you don't need to watch. Alright, let's get the Nichrome chain coil, which you just saw a quick little macro shot of, and pretty nice amount of throat hit on this coil, which is probably the same principle as like tiger wire. We got a little bit of extra texture. It pops quite a bit. This is a 0.3 ohm coil, and for a 0.3 ohm coil, it's a dual coil. I mean, it does a significant amount of vapor. I mean, kind of an impressive amount of vapor. The flavor is good. I mean, so far, nothing I've built in the last few weeks has topped the zipper coil as far as the flavor goes. That's still the best flavored build that I've ever encountered, and I would really suggest trying that one out if you haven't already. I see a lot of those popping up online now, which is awesome that people are enjoying that. Like I said at the beginning, this coil is kind of more for aesthetics than performance, but I mean, it performs really well. It does good. For 0.3 ohm coil, there's not much else to say about it. It's a pretty long build video, so fast forward the parts that you don't want to see. And if it doesn't interest you, well, you already saw the main, highlights. So, got a build video for you guys today. We're making the chain coil, Nichrome chain coil, which is just a pretty standard micro coil that looks like a chain. So you're gonna need some stuff. Some pliers to hold your wire with, some wire clippers, toothless pliers, which most of my build videos have needed so far, which is just smooth pliers that have no teeth on them. 30 gauge Nichrome is what I'm going to be using. Unless you're going to do a single coil, I would suggest using a 4-post atomizer, just because it's going to be really hard to get 2 of these wires through that center post, or you could try to do a single strand build if you wanted to do a dual coil when you just have one hole in that center post. And then something to wrap your coil on, and of course a drill. Let's get this stuff out of the way. So what I'm going to do is just grab a pretty healthy length of this 30 gauge here. And I'm using Nichrome. Nichrome has lower resistance than Kanthal for the same size. And also, it's a lot softer than Kanthal, so that's why I'm using this instead of Kanthal for this, because that chain effect is achieved from, got one more strand of this, hopefully I have enough for this video. The chain effect is achieved by just flattening the outside, like the very outside of the twisted wire. Gives kind of a beveled look, and you already saw the macro shot at the beginning there, and as we go through I'll show you some more macro shots during the process. Make sure this doesn't unravel on me. Alright. And when twisting two strands of wire, or just this, two pieces of wire, it's a lot easier than doing a whole bunch of strands at the same time. What I do is just grab the two ends and tie a knot in it. Just a regular overhand knot. Wrap it on my finger, pull it through. And it's thin enough to where it's pretty easy to get a real nice tight knot in there. Make sure you don't kink the rest of your wire up while you're doing this, but I just grab the end of that and then I just pull, and you can kind of straighten this wire out as you go as well. You end up with a little loop here at the end, which I'm just going to stick any sort of screwdriver through there once I get this other part into the drill chuck. And it holds it nice and straight, and you get a great even twist on this wire. So I'm going to clip off this leads just so I can get it into the drill. Screw the drill chuck down onto this wire. Nice and tight in there. And then the other side, I just stick my screwdriver through that lead, pull it nice and snug, and I'm going to twist this counterclockwise first, because basically this is going to be a twisted wire that we're going to fold over or cut in half and then twist two of those together the opposite direction. So I'm going to start counterclockwise so that I could be dealing with clockwise later on, which I'm used to. So you want to hold quite a bit of tension on this while you're twisting this initially. And then now the twist is really uniform, so you don't need a lot of tension to be held over here in order to keep those twists uniform. So kind of lighten up on that a little bit. If you keep on just pulling real hard on this, it's just going to snap off, and we want to go ahead and get a nice twist in this. So just kind of ease up on the slack a little bit. You don't want this much slack because it'll kink up, but just basically hold it so that it's not going to kink, but not too much pressure. And just like with other twisted wire, you're going to start noticing this end contracting and pulling over, and you just want to let that, let this hand over here get pulled in that direction as it tightens up. I took it a little bit too far. Like once the wire stops contracting, you want to go ahead and stop twisting it, because if it breaks off at the chuck, once it's twisted to the maximum, it's going to kink up like this on you. And so to fix this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to fix it. And I guess this is good as has happened on video, so you guys know how to at least attempt to fix this if it happens to you. I just stick that wire back in there. Make sure this is still going, the drill's still going in the same direction. Getting them real tight, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a lot of pressure on this, not so much that it's going to break the wire like without even spinning it, but enough so that you can definitely feel the tension on there. And then I'm just going to start spinning slowly. And hopefully this will tight. This will get some of those kinks out. And you don't want to take it too fast, because you don't want it to just break and kink again. And I think that's about as good as we're going to be able to get that out of there. And that should do the trick. So I'm just going to hold tension on this wire. And as I'll bring it over to the camera here. Hold tension on this wire. while I let go of this side, and it's gonna, yeah, it untwisted pretty violently because you got a lot of built up energy in there. And so it seemed to straighten it out pretty well. And the thing about Nichrome is it's a lot softer than Kanthal, so you can get a way tighter twist on this thing. And from here, it's just going to be a matter of, I like to fold it in half and pull it out. And then I just clip this end right here. You get two wires which are roughly the same length and pretty evenly twisted because you're all one piece of wire originally. So then I'm just going to hand twist these together with some pliers. So I'm going to get this side in pliers. You don't need a huge amount of it twisted up, just enough to stick into the chuck of that drill. And then I just twist this. I pretend like these pliers are, I just imagine that this plier is the tip of this drill, and I do it the same direction that I'm about to twist this. And since I twisted these counterclockwise, I'm going to go ahead and twist the wire up together clockwise. So I'm just going to put some rough twists in here. And open this up a bit. Get that into the chuck of the drill. It doesn't really matter how far in you put it. I like to just put it so that the twisted portion is just sticking out there. And make sure to turn the drill the other way. So now we're going clockwise. And then you just pull as much of the slack out of this as you can. Throw the pliers here. Grab the ends. And I'm just going to really slowly make sure that these are in there good. Like you can even tug on both of these wires just to make sure that not one of them isn't going to slip out of there. Pull, make sure that it looks like all the tension is pulled out. So these guys are in parallel. I'm going to hold quite a bit of pressure on this while you start spinning these up. So at this point, you've got a real even kind of helix type pattern. Almost looks like strands of DNA. And as you go farther, you're going to notice some changes in this wire. And what's happening here is those twists of the opposite direction are starting to open up. And you just kind of keep an eye on it. This takes a bit of practice to not just twist it too far. I can still see a little piece right here that hasn't opened up yet. And that's about it. So once this little part here gets opened up all the way, I'm going to stop immediately. Oh, and I think... we're there. This is kind of a delicate process. If you take it too far, the whole wire starts getting wavy as it twists, past what it wants to. And so I'm just going to hold this and let go and pause the video and show you guys a macro shot of what this wire should look like at this point. Okay, so at this point, what you're looking at is a piece of wire which is pretty uniformly twisted up here. And what's actually going on with this wire, let me see if I can get this pointer down in here. There it is. Sorry, it's kind of dark. There we go. You can actually watch the individual twisted strands going around. There's a layer, another layer, and they're so closely together and so well aligned that it looks like just a big jumble of knotted wire. And it gives the illusion that it's interlinked chains. But you can actually see here where this little strand goes over diagonally that way. And again, it's just a twisted wire, untwisted slightly as it gets wrapped around. And it doesn't look much like chain at this point. Just looks kind of like, there we go, kind of like a really pretty twisted wire. But it's actually what the next process is going to be what gives it that flattening kind of effect. And so once you get in there with the toothless pliers and just start flattening out, we're just going to flatten out this outside edge of these individual little twists right there. It's not going to flatten the whole entire wire, it's just going to flatten that little outside piece, which is going to give it that chain link appearance. Anyway, hope that explains it a little bit. So we got it all twisted up and ready for flattening. I'm just going to go ahead and clip this portion off just so we get a nice uniform piece of that wire in there. And just stick it back in the chuck of the drill, get it tightened down nicely. And here's where the toothless pliers are going to come in. Make sure it's going in the clockwise direction, the same way that you twisted it up originally. And when you first start hitting this with the pliers, you want to do it really, really loosely, like looser than if you were doing the spiral wire. And it's going to click on you as you're doing this. And the first pass is just seeing if you can't get it as even as possible. And it usually will even up this wire pretty uniformly from beginning to end. Just gonna get rid of that. I'm gonna get rid of this end portion. I'm always tempted to try to get everything twisted the same, even these loose ends, and it ends up ruining my wire half the time, so I'm gonna get rid of that. And you'll feel it clicking, and as you pull the tension out of this, it's actually behind the pliers, it's loosening it up and retwisting it again. So you're going to feel it jumping around a little bit. You don't want to push too much pressure. If it's really jumping around on you, you want to stop because it's going to start kinking up. And this takes quite a few passes with the toothless pliers. So you'll notice it getting easier and easier each time. Less and less clickiness, because it's clicking through there. And you can hear it and feel it. But each time you do it, it flattens the outside of that wire a little bit. And eventually it's just going to feel really smooth as you go across them. And you're never going to be putting a lot of pressure on this. It's always just going to be a real light amount of pressure. And you basically just keep going over it with similar amounts of pressure until it feels really smooth and you're not getting very many clicks. It's already getting a lot smoother. And I stumbled upon this wire accidentally, and the first time I made it I had no idea what I had made until I looked at those macro pictures, and then I was like, that looks like a chain. But you might not even notice it until you look really closely. So you're just gonna feel for that smoothness. It's already getting a lot more smooth as I go through here. And that's basically it. So I'll show you some macro shots of the wire. Okay, and it might take you a little bit longer to get that flattened. After I stopped the video there, I went back over this about 10 more times because it wasn't as flat as I had wanted it. But now you can see that chain effect happening here as the outsides of this thing get flattened around the edges, and so you end up with that starts looking like a chain. And so Nichrome is, like I said I think a couple times already, really soft, so you're able, it has a lot more malleability, a lot more play. You can do this with Kanthal, but it still works. I've done a few times. It just ends up not looking quite the same. I'm not sure if that's because it's pulling it through with less slack in the wire, but it ends up looking a lot more boxy. And that's why I went with 30 gauge too, rather than a higher gauge. One reason is that this wire gets really thick, wide around, so it gets harder and harder to fit into post holes, and also because it loses that chain appearance, it looks more like it gets really boxy looking and more likely to break while you're wrapping the coil. I've tried it with 26 gauge Nichrome, I've tried it with 28 gauge Kanthal, and so far the 30 gauge Nichrome turns out the nicest looking. So I'll go ahead and wrap up a coil real quick, and let's finish this build video up. Ready to wrap the coil, and but remember, just with any wire that you mod out like this, using toothless pliers or do any kind of real extreme twisting on, you want to wash first. So I went ahead and washed this and rinsed it for about 5 minutes just to do my best to get any of the possible metal particles out of there. And Nichrome, I avoided it for a long time because I read, I believe on ECF, everyone said that Nichrome has a weird taste to it. I have not noticed any sort of weird taste with it. I finally just bought some because I wanted to try it. And I have not noticed a weird taste with it. Some people swear there's always a strange metallic taste, but Nichrome is nickel and chromium. Kanthal wire has nickel and chromium in it, has also iron and aluminum. So it's a similar composition, I guess you could say, has some of the same components that Kanthal does, and I personally have never tasted anything funky with it. Now you can torch this first before you get started because this has a lot of springiness in it. I prefer not to, just because Nichrome has a much lower melting point than Kanthal, so I just don't like risking melting my wire before I have a chance to wrap a coil with it, and I'm pretty used to dealing with springy wire. So I like to just stick it here on my bit and then just start wrapping as tight as I can. And last time I did 5 wraps. Last time I built this one was 5 wraps, and it came out, each coil was about 0.5 or 0.6. And every wrap you do, you want to let go of this wire, because if you keep holding tension on it, it's going to start twisting in weird ways. So every wrap you put into this, it's actually, the wire itself is rotating, and you want to go ahead and let that wire go wherever it wants to naturally, so it doesn't start changing shape and kinking up. And that's going to be good for a single coil here. So if you notice one leg sticking out like that, I just pull it a little bit tighter, pull it down, and twist it a little bit farther, and try it again, twist it a little bit farther, until I get them kind of sitting in the same place. So even with really springy wire, you can still get a pretty nice shape to it before you go ahead and go to mount this on the atomizer. So I drilled this atomizer. This is an igo-m version 1 that I modded out pretty severely. Let's see here. So used to have this big old airflow control ring right here. And I just took a diamond cutoff wheel with a Dremel and just got rid of that because it was right in the way of building these coils, or mounting the coils. And then these holes I took out to 1/16 of an inch. So the plume veil should work good for this. Helios, if it's drilled out. I'm not actually familiar with the Helios, but I think it has smaller post holes. Or any 4-post atomizer should work just fine for this build. If you want to do dual coils. If you're just going to do a single coil, then it doesn't really matter which atomizer you use as long as the post holes are big enough to fit it. So let me see here. And just going to stick it through right there. And get the other side. Thread it in. And then whatever you use to build it on, I would get positioned in there. And then I like to get it, just make sure, you know, you guys know how to build coils. Just make sure it's not super close to this, but pretty close, because when I'm dry firing this, I'm going to try to adjust it. And I'm going to be pulling on that wire to try to get some tension out of it. So I want it pretty much almost touching that positive post there. And so I'm just going to go ahead and hold that guy in place while I screw it down. Alrighty. Son of a mug. Alright. Make sure that didn't totally ruin it. Let's see here. That stretched it quite a bit. Alright, I'm going to unscrew that and pull it through again. There we go. Tighten it down one more time. And then get this one kind of where I want it. Pull this side through as well. Pretty tight. And with twisted wire, you don't really want to put too much tension in it, because once you start dry firing it, it will change shape and compress. And so hopefully I haven't, by dropping it there and bending it, hopefully I haven't put too much tension in this wire. Because you can have it, I mean, I can get it nice and straight right now, but I'm guessing once I start firing this up that it's going to change shape. And with Nichrome, it has a really low melting point, so you don't ever want to just hold it down for a really long time. So it's a little bit different than Kanthal, where you can actually pretty easily melt these leads. And I just keep sticking in the screwdriver back in, kind of pulling tension back a little bit, and pulsing it again. It's starting to line up a little bit better. But I like my coils to look a little bit nicer. And this coil ends up kind of looking a little bit junky before there's a wick in there. And it's kind of hard to actually see what's even going on without a wick. Compress it a little bit. And that's looking pretty much as good as that's gonna get. So you just want it, you know, as even as possible, so when you stick your wick through there, it's gonna have good contact all the way around. And I mean, that's about it.